people really just enjoyed using the product. It wasn't perfect, of course, as with any early stage company, but we were fortunate enough to get a lot of referrals. And so we scaled out the initial customer base to, a low seven-figure run rate from just referrals. And that was all before raising our initial capital.
Welcome to the VectorShift podcast. VectorShift is an AI automations platform. On this podcast, we have conversations with founders and experts in fields such as AI and B2B SaaS. Just for our listeners, we'll have to give a brief background on Brendan. So Brendan is the CEO and founder of Mercor. Mercor is an AI-powered platform that sources, vets, and pays your employees. Just as a side note, we're personally at VectorShift very happy customers with Mercor. And Mercor has really been our partners for our hiring, especially for our contractors and even our full-time employees. And they've delivered some, really great engineers, A+ talent into our team. And we really see them as, partners as we grow as well. Today on this podcast, we're going to be talking about mainly three things. One is Brendan and Mercor's, founding story. Second, we're going to talk a little bit about their product and what is really differentiated about that. And, we'll talk about why we use it, as well in that section. And finally, we'll talk a little bit about go-to-market and hear some of Brendan's final thoughts on the startup ecosystem. So I'm going to kick things off, Brendan. And can you talk a little bit about your background and, how you got to being the founder of Mercor today?
Absolutely. Well, I first of all want to say I appreciate the glowing review, and I'm so appreciative of your having us on the podcast. So the sentiment is certainly both ways. To give some context on Mercor's founding story, my co-founders Adarsh, Surya, and I have known each other for a long time. We went to high school together, and we were always building various forms of companies in one form or another. Launching all sorts of web apps, one of which we scaled to six-figure revenue in high school. So I never really wanted to go to college in the first place. But the thing that was always hardest about building companies, and also most important, was scaling out the team and hiring the right people to solve the problem. And we became very obsessed with this idea of the inefficiencies around doing this and how outdated this process is around the most important part of building a company. And so we launched Mercor with the goal of making that process 100 times better, streamlining the way that people hire, the way that people review candidates, and surfacing them the best candidates from all around the world.
Absolutely. I mean, as we usually start off ourselves, hiring is actually my number one priority, and figuring out the right talent, is always on my mind. You talk a little bit about kind of the vision of Mercor, but could you go a little bit more specific about what you have found that is broken in hiring, and what is your long-term goal of how you're going to fix that?
Absolutely. So the way that hiring works for the most part right now is a services business that's bound by people. It comes in a variety of forms. It can be recruiters that people pay these obscene recruiting fees to, or it can be staffing agencies that might take a percentage of salary. And these businesses charge incredibly high margins and are incredibly hard to scale because they're services businesses that are bound by people. And our plan and product automates all of these traditionally human processes to create infrastructure that's not only far better, but has much, much more exciting scalability and truly the capability to vet everyone on Earth. So we've onboarded, hundreds of thousands of people around the world. Also are building out a talent cloud where we added over 1 million people just this week, evaluating GitHub profiles and all sorts of data with everyone online, really driven with AI, evaluating each characteristic of every person from the ground up.
Absolutely. I'm curious, there's a lot of other, startups, building in the HR tech recruiting space. How would you, describe, how Mercor is different? What is the unique insight in the platform?
Totally. I think there's a lot of startups building in this space, and that's exactly the problem. It's that we have one tool, LinkedIn, for sourcing candidates and filtering by what company they might have worked at or how many years of experience they have. We have another platform, whether it be Apollo or Zoom Info, to populate data on those individuals or Wizard or whatever. And then we have outbound campaigns and software to manage all of that, all the way to the ATS system that we're plugging this person into, Calendly for scheduling the meetings, and then a very significant manual process to really go through all of the candidates on top of that. And one of our very unique opinions is similar to Rippling in that we believe what users want is a compound startup. They don't want to use 10 tools. They want one tool that solves the entire problem for them. So Albert, when you go on to the Mercor dashboard, you're able to describe that you want a software engineer within a certain budget that might have experience building the kinds of integrations that you guys need built out for VectorShift. And those profiles are surfaced instantly for you, pulling on all of the data that was collected in their AI interviews and their AI evaluation of GitHubs and their resumes and all of that.
So, and that's kind of why we, found it really intuitive, to use Mercor. It's kind of the one-stop shop where we can find, pay, and immediately try and leverage engineers all around the world. So we foresee the vision there, and that's kind of why we're really early supporters and kind of love the product that you built. I guess we'll diving more into the product. Could you walk through, the experience that, you want to create both from the applicant side and also from, the user side, someone who's looking to hire,
Totally.
And what you want that to be?
Totally. I'll start with the applicant side because that's our bread and butter. And that's one thing that makes us incredibly unique compared to other companies that are in the space. And that all the other companies start with the company and the hiring side. But our belief is that really getting the best candidates, getting the best data on those candidates, and understanding who has the best price performance is the number one thing that we need to get right in the business. So the applicant UX is designed very simply as well as elegantly, where the applicant can upload their resume, get that resume parsed by a multimodal language model, evaluated by a prompt engineered version of GPT-4. And then they can go to the interviews page where they can select their skills, their preferred role, and then they can click to schedule an interview. And our AI interviewer, John Sharma, will send them an interview invite, which is just like a Calendly where they can set up time. And John Sharma will join the interview at this time and have a conversation with them, asking them about the specific work experiences that they might have on their resume, about the system architecture of their GitHub repositories, and about why they chose to do certain styling on their personal website, having full context of that individual and conducting a beautiful interview. Right now, we only do one interview layer, but as you can imagine, as we scale out the infrastructure, we'll likely be doing, call it a dozen interviews on each candidate to really figure out who's best for a given role. And this AI interview is far better in a lot of cases than a human interview because it's able to do so much pre-processing and have so much context on the individual. And then the final step after the interview is that we ask them to fill out details on their availability and the amount of money that they're looking to make. So that, Albert, when you're hiring, you can, not have to figure out if these 100 candidates are all busy and unavailable when you're hiring, but rather that all of these candidates are within your budget and are ready to start with you guys so that you can hit the ground running. That gives sort of the worker side of the platform. And I know that was a lot, so happy to clarify questions and then also give a description of what the company side looks like.
No, absolutely. I guess, we'll talk a little bit about the vetting process as a follow-up, and then we'll head over to the hiring side. What I found amazing is because we were looking for an engineer, and you guys really found a rock star every time, when we're looking for one. Could you talk a little bit about, I don't know if there's a secret sauce or how did you leverage AI, or how did this process work to really find the right person and be able to differentiate, get the right data in all the interview process, when you created this?
It's a great question. And it's really hard, especially internationally, because of talent density, where if you're interviewing Stanford AI PhDs, your hit rate's probably pretty good on them being excellent because the AI PhD vetting process at Stanford is already relatively rigorous. But if you're hiring, people who might not have an impressive work experience or education, who live somewhere in a remote part of India, the amount of applicants that you get is so high, and the percentage of those applicants that are truly incredible is so low. And the unfortunate thing that happens is that those people aren't given opportunities and they're neglected by everyone else because they don't have Google or Stanford on their resume. And when you're able to actually build scalable vetting processes that use software, not people, to review all of their resumes, to look at the kinds of open source repositories that they're committing to, and to actually do like thorough, in-depth interviews of every candidate, you're able to find the diamonds in the rough, the candidates that no one else is looking at, and really unlock a lot of opportunity on the worker side for people who aren't getting these opportunities, as well as the company side, which you guys have experienced.
Absolutely. We're more familiar with the company side experience. But for us, can you talk a little bit about, what, I guess, if someone comes to your platform as looking to hire, what they can expect and what the process looks like?
Totally. So the company side process, we also want to be incredibly low friction, where straight from our website, someone can type in a query and get brought to our company dashboard, where they're shown profiles almost instantly. This is a dynamic query where they can describe the nuances of the work experience or kind of GitHub commits that they're looking for. And the semantic search is currently a relatively early version, but improving incredibly quickly, doing all sorts of approaches to weight the kind of data that we're doing with all of the embeddings, all the way to doing a bunch of fancy meta labels in helping us improve that search. And once they see profiles, you can either request an interview of that candidate to have a conversation with them. You can watch the AI interview where we show the recording of what was conducted, or you can even add that person to your team instantly, where we found that some people who are hiring get to the level of confidence where they're willing to add that person to their team for a trial right off the bat.
Absolutely. So it seems, you mentioned before you're trying to build almost this compound startup, that abstracts away end to end, both the application process and interview process and also the hiring process. What would you say was the most difficult piece of building this startup from a product perspective? What are the barriers you ran into and have or trying to overcome right now?
It's a really good question. And it gets to the heart of why people don't build compound startups, which is that it's a lot, right? Like we have AI GitHub evaluation, which could be a startup in and of itself. We have AI parsing of resumes and evaluation of resumes that's super in depth, which could be a startup in itself. Our AI interviewer, we've gotten a dozen people who've asked us to use this as a standalone SaaS product, and we've had to say no to that so that we can stay focused. All the way to our search and our payment processing infrastructure, which could all be startups in and of themselves. So we need to build this very vertically integrated process, which just includes a lot of legwork. One thing that I have to say on this front is a big shout out to our India team, where the reason we've been able to accomplish a lot of this as an early stage company is that we've really scaled out a lot of the ground forces in India and are setting up a Bangalore office shortly. And that's allowed us to, find the cost structure that we're looking for and the efficiency to really have a hard driving culture that can execute on such an ambitious vision.
Absolutely. Let's go more to the go-to-market side of things. we'd love to hear about, maybe we can just talk about how did you get your first customer and, how has that scaled, since you got the first customer, how have you kind of built the momentum that you have?
Great question. Well, we started the business, as I mentioned, for ourselves, in that we loved building startups and didn't want to go to college. We were much more interested in building startups. And so we naturally sold to a lot of people that were just like us, early stage founders that might have been working on a project at the time and couldn't afford an expensive engineer. So they wanted to hire someone remotely at a far different cost structure. And people really just enjoyed using the product. It wasn't perfect, of course, as with any early stage company, but we were fortunate enough to get a lot of referrals. And so we scaled out the initial customer base to a low seven-figure run rate from just referrals. And that was all before raising our initial capital. And so we wanted to ride off that as long as we can. And then now we're beginning to, think about our go-to-market push as we start going up market and into enterprises where the go-to-market looks very different.
I'm sorry. I guess referrals is the golden goose that all founders want. So
Yeah.
how do you think you guys have cracked that at Mercor?
It's a great question. I think it needs to be product led. People need to have a very acute problem that you're trying to solve. And the solution does not need to be perfect because no startup at an early stage is perfect. But if the problem is acute and you're, working your butt off to really create a meaningful difference for the founders appreciate that. And they want to help you along the way. They want to refer you to their friends. And it just grew from there. There's also a bunch of creative strategies in sourcing referrals. Like you can ask people questions to get referrals in a very unique way. An example of this is instead of asking someone, hey, do you have any friends that might be good Mercor customers? You can ask them, hey, do you have any friends that are hiring? Or do you have any friends that might have just raised a funding round? Right? Because then people's wheels get spinning on that front much more so. That's the first thing I'll say. And then the second thing I'll say is that being a part of communities is really impactful. We were a part of this community, Prod, which started in Boston, and Albert's sort of a part of as well, which was able to put us in touch with a lot of early stage founders and help us out in a huge way. And we're super grateful for that community. But people can find similar things through the Y Combinator network and all sorts of other accelerators around the world.
Absolutely. That's how we got introduced, to Mercor initially as well through Prod.
Yeah.
I guess the go-to-market, initial go-to-market, I know you were mentioning to me, it was initially services led, at least in the delivery and kind of the Mercor service. Why do you think that is differentiating, and what has been the unique advantage of that?
Yeah, it's a very interesting point, which is that I think many startups are too product focused at the beginning. They are obsessed with having all of the software built out to truly solve the problem, which is where the company dies because it's not able to get the user feedback early enough, and it's not able to get the traction necessary to really take it to the next level on a hiring front, on a fundraising front, on a go-to-market front. And so we started doing a lot of these processes manually and with AI tools to sort of help automate that stuff, where it was myself and my co-founder Surya manually reviewing a bunch of resumes and doing a bunch of interviews. And then we started out with, AI tools to help us shortlist resumes by looking for certain features. Like we were able to find correlations that people who'd studied abroad in Western countries were far more likely to enjoy working with and work well alongside US companies. And we're able to find these correlations, use all of these tools to help our manual process. And this allowed us to scale revenue very quickly early on and eventually translate that into automating all of the things that we knew that customers wanted and really step on the gas with creating an incredible product experience.
Absolutely. Amazing. How is Mercor's, in 2024, as we, kick off the next year, you mentioned you're trying to scale, the go-to-market more so, to compound on the referrals that you've received. Do you have any inkling on what that would look like?
Yeah, totally. So there's broadly two channels that we're very interested in at a high level. The first channel is early stage and content driven because that's where we started. That's where we've certainly found product market fit and where we feel confident in creating a lot of value, especially as everything becomes fully productized and flushed out. So that involves a lot of creative strategies we've talked about, like using GPT to write thousands of blog posts that might be pertinent to whatever kind of skill someone is hiring for, whether it be, a blog post on how to hire GIS engineers internationally. And we have custom AI interviews that have been conducted on thousands of GIS engineers. And then the second channel that we're very interested in, where I'll likely be spending a significant amount of my time, is going up market in a variety of ways. Most specifically, we're interested in companies that are hiring high volumes of talent and contractors. An example might be that Salesforce has thousands of Salesforce integrations engineers, and we're able to vet and onboard 10,000 Salesforce integration engineers faster than anyone else because we have software-based processes to do this end to end. And those upmarket contracts are very exciting because each one of them could potentially be 8-figure annual deals off the bat and really accelerate our growth.
Absolutely. Amazing. Well, this is super, super interesting, and it's great having you today. We really ask everyone, one final question at the end of each of these interviews. There's a big debate in Silicon Valley about how important your idea is, your strategy of what you're trying to build longer term, versus how important your actual execution is on a day to day. We talked a lot about where you're trying to push to long term and today. And I'm curious, what is your view on this debate? What is more important, your vision or strategy, or your actual execution?
Yeah, it's very fascinating. The quote that's always jumped out to me on this topic is that ideas are a multiplier on execution. And it really gets at this notion that one can't exist without the other. You need to be aimed in the right direction, and you also need to execute. But I think I'm certainly more in the camp that execution is underrated, and you need to really work hard to get anywhere in life, let alone in the challenging task of building a legendary company.
Absolutely. Thank you for your insight today. And thank you so much for your time, Brendan. Appreciate it.
Of course. Albert, thanks so much for having me, and hopefully we can do this another time as well.
All right. Thank you.